Hi, here's Sean Couturier, captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, and you're listening to Snow the Goalie.
Oh, yes! Welcome into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, the Anthony SanFilippo Gets Married in a Few Days podcast. I'm Russ Joy. There is the blushing bride himself in the middle, Anthony SanFilippo on Twitter, at AntSanPhilly. And the guy who I've been told is going to be the flower, I don't know if I can call you a flower girl, but Bundy on Twitter at Therien6. How you guys doing?
Can I interrupt you just for 1 second here, Russ?
What's up, dog?
I mean, I've already given you the job of being the officiant at the wedding.
See,
Are you now trying to audition as the DJ? What the heck was the music we had at the beginning? I mean, I know that people are going to be asking, what the heck was the new music at the beginning of the thing there?
It's just some basic music that's available to us. That's free use music that you can use, and it's whatever, free to play or whatever. And we do that, and it's good for the YouTube algorithm. So we just rock and roll with it a little bit there, Anthony.
You did rock and roll a little bit there. By the way, speaking of, you try to make a joke about Bundy being the flower girl. Maria got a text message. I won't say from who.
Oh.
But Maria got a text message, I think it was yesterday. Might have been the day before, but I think it was yesterday. That said that Bundy can't wait to dance at the wedding.
Get out.
How true is this, Bundy?
I'm gonna cut a rug for you. I'm gonna chop up the rug pretty good, and I'm gonna carve up that beautiful floor at that beautiful wedding venue that night. I don't dance, Ant, but for you, I'm going to.
This is. We need video, man. We need the video cameras.
There's gonna be
all the video you want. It'll be there. I promise you.
There's gonna be a lot of video. Are we going to do a press row show from the wedding? I don't know. It remains to be seen. Will we do something from the reception? Do we want to get a moment where Ant is crying on the dance floor? It'd be a great moment. Will his sons? I think his sons are both delivering a speech. Do we? Yep. Do we catch them with a beautiful moment? Does Ant dance with his daughter? I'm sure that would make him cry as well. I think that there's a gold mine of content available to us. Let's get Ant while he's crying. If Torts could make him cry, his kids can. Let's go after it.
That's right. And I'm all in on this.
I love it. I love it because you know what? It will be. I know it's going to be a great time. I do know that, and I'm expecting a great day. Remember, I told you guys I might have the little camera with me. Just kind of leaning out like this at the wedding, filming Ant up at the Russ here doing. I might get a live Snow the Goalie feed, actually. Just put that right out there for everyone.
Hey, I want to address a rumor that has been out there. I wanted to address something because last episode we had go as a premiere on YouTube, and so people were commenting live, which we greatly appreciate. And there was a super chat that I'll have to pull up for later in the show. But Rob South, if you want proof of life, is this one actually live? Indeed it is. Now, we do have a pre-recorded interview with the Flyers captain, Sean Couturier, which we did earlier this week. And it is something that you absolutely want to stick around for because there are some moments in that interview that I think are going to, I don't know if we're going to say totally turn heads, but are certainly going to give you a little bit of insight into what might have happened last year. So that's all we can say there. Now, guys,
we appreciate Coots' time. It was a really good amount of time. We got some really good candid answers from him. No BS at all. And it was great to see Coots and great to have him on.
So we have a few different ways that we can go about this, guys. We can either start there or we can do a little bit of talking around what's going on around the Flyers right now. I think that might be the smarter place to start. Let's go to the Couturier interview, and then we can come out on the backside and kind of react to it. Now, in fairness, is this something that we could have discussed? This is something we could have texted about or done a little pre-show prep for? Sure, but that's not what Snow the Goalie is. We fly by the seat of our pants, and here we are.
I suggest diving into Danny's press conference yesterday because I thought it was a heck of a press conference yesterday.
Uh-huh.
What do you say? Do you not agree? I mean, for those that didn't see it,
yeah, go ahead because I'll
for those that didn't see it, I thought it was Danny Briere doing his best version of we're Philadelphia and we don't care what anybody else thinks, and setting a culture kind of belief in what that organization is going to be going forward. And it might be something that there will be criticism of early. And I understand why. I mean, completely understand why, right? But at the same time, it takes a set of balls to come out and basically tell your own player that, look, we have an expectation and you're not meeting it, and to say it publicly. And I think that what Danny did yesterday is something that everybody's taking notice of. Like they mean business over there in Philadelphia. This is not the shit show that was there before. This is a little bit different. I know, Russ, you probably have a slightly different take on it, and that's fine. But I think it was eye-opening and refreshing, and I think people in Philadelphia will like it.
Who do you think Danny Briere called out? I mean, you didn't say the name, but who's the guy that he called out and said?
Well, we're talking about Kolosov specifically, and I think it was a little shot at the agency, the new agency as well. Little bit, not as much, but I do think that this is not the way things were operating here before. You're operating with different people now, and we're going to do it our way, and you got to buy in, or we don't want you part of it.
I also thought like a little bit of the Ryan Johansson stuff too, right?
Yeah, well, hold on.
Yeah,
we'll go to that next. But Kolosov, real quick, Ant.
Yeah,
what was the quasi revelation that came out yesterday? What's the thing that Danny said for the first time publicly? That has not been stated publicly to this point about Kolosov.
That Kolosov does not want to play in the AHL. He wants to play either NHL or KHL. He does not want to play in the AHL.
Vindicated! I am selfless! I am wrong! Okay, this is the shit I've been saying for 2 months. You look at the timeline of when Fedotov came and when Kolosov was coming over, and it is fucking crystal clear that he thought he was going to compete for a spot either on the NHL roster at the end of last year or this year have a legitimate chance to be the backup, and he got jumped 3 days later by Fedotov. I don't know why this has been some like big thing that we've had to like tiptoe around, but like he doesn't want to play in the AHL. He very clearly did not want to play in the AHL, seemingly made no effort to try to get to know his teammates, which I can't hold against the organization or those players. Briere came out and said, guys tried to get him to go to dinner. He didn't want to. He wanted to isolate. You brought up on the last episode, he didn't want to share a room with anybody. He wanted to be left alone. Something very clearly when I've been saying, something went wrong, something became a disconnect. This guy isolated. Was he pissed off last year when he got the visa? It came in later than Fedotov's. He ended up over here and he saw whatever might have been a chance at an NHL contract going sideways. Like, is that what it was? Doesn't matter. He doesn't want to be here to play in Lehigh Valley. And I think that's been pretty clear since the Fedotov thing came up last year. And now all of a sudden, we're kind of in this, it's not a smear campaign, but it's we don't guarantee spots here. We don't guarantee, you have to earn it, which is fair. But Bundy even said it last episode. Big Russian, he get contract. I don't get contract. I go home. Yeah.
This is the problem that I've talked about. You're going to have, I don't even think this is a misogynistic comment, but there's been lots of problematic guys that have come from overseas, and a lot of them have been Russians. Bill Meltzer made a comment yesterday, guys, and I just want to read this because I saw it and I thought it hit home perfectly. Alexei Kolosov, good prospect, but no Shesterkin, not Ilya Sorokin, not even Sergei Bobrovsky going back to 2010, 2011. Came in with zero guarantees and earned an NHL job. Not even a slam dunk to be on Yaroslav Askarov's level. No NHL organization has an ironclad spot for AK. Earn it. So yeah. I understand that, but what happens is that he's right that he's not Shesterkin or Sorokin, but you know what? There was talk about the fact that he could be a great Russian prospect. Again, all of a sudden now it's maybe he's not that good. I don't know if he is or isn't, but they have two goalies. They have Ursan and Fedotov. And I think this kid is saying, I'm not going to go. That's exactly what it was. I'm not going to go play in the minors and ride a bus. I'd rather stay back here and fly planes and take a 12-hour KHL flight, to some trips are that long, believe it or not, than ride a bus where he figures he doesn't have any forward advancement. But I disagree with that. I think he should stick around and try to actually make a go of it. And if he does play well, then you can ask for a trade really quickly.
this comment, by the way, Bundy, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I
that's
obviously
fine.
jump in here, but Donald actually does bring up the really good point here, and this kind of speaks to what Bundy's saying. I want to pull this up in tandem with another one that actually did come in just before it,
Well-
and it was about how when he signed his ELC, Carter Hart was here, Sam Ersson was here, and so like you were potentially just trying to fight for the backup spot. Hart goes away. This has been the whole thing, though, right? But what Donald says here, with Hart now gone, Kolosov is an injury or underperformance from the existing goalies away from getting consistent NHL minutes, which is like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like, yeah, you might not want to go to the A right now, but there's no guarantee that Fedotov is a stud. And if that's the case, the Flyers aren't necessarily tied to that wagon that much where they couldn't make a change.
So let me
I don't get it.
Let me throw it to you this way, Russ. Okay.
Mhm.
When Kolosov signs that contract, don't you think that his former agency, which was JP Barry and CAA, were intimately aware of what was coming with Carter Hart? We all were. I mean, let's be honest, like we had all heard everything that was going to happen, right? So don't you think they are aware of that? So when he signs that contract, he's looking at it and saying, okay, they're going to agree to let me stay in Russia for the year.
Mm-hmm.
The goalie that's there is not going to be there when I'm done. So it'll be an easy, I step in. I may not be the starting goalie right away, but I'm going to be in the NHL, right? Because Fedotov's off in Siberia. Carter Hart, they know, is going to be out of the league, right? And so therefore, he looks at it as, here's the clearest path for me to get to the NHL. And then Fedotov shows back up, right? And so that's like, okay.
3 days after Kolosov signed.
Well,
3 days after Kolosov,
That is-
he leaves Minsk and
Yeah,
is heading
look,
to the U.S.
and
with,
so
with
that
the
happens.
delayed visa issue.
That happens, right? But there's always going to be competition. You don't just, and that's the thing I think that he fails to realize is that there's always going to be another guy who's part of it. And Danny mentioned it yesterday in the press conference. And again, this is what I think was really kind of, everybody talked about the things that he said about Kolosov and missing an opportunity and this and that. But the reality of it is that most teams in the NHL need a third goalie at some point during a regular season. And, whether injuries happen, guys get sick, whatever the case might be, it happens. And that guy gets an opportunity to come up. He would have been easily, automatically in the top 3 had he come over. The plan was for him to be the number 1 guy in the AHL with the Phantoms. And he is the next guy up if something were to happen. And when you look at the situation with Ersson and Fedotov, in Ersson, you have a guy who was good for you last year, but really ran out of gas when he became the go-to guy. So you don't know if he can be that number 1 or if he's really just better off as a number 2. You have absolutely no idea what you're getting in Fedotov. So if you're Kolosov, you should look at this and say, this is the greatest opportunity for me.
Yeah.
This is the best chance for me to get to the NHL quickly. And the fact that he's completely not taking advantage of that opportunity is lost on me, and I think lost on everybody as to why would you do this to yourself and really sink the possibility of ever playing in this league? It makes zero sense.
What about Anthony? Here's the problem though. Like, what if Fedotov was the Kolosov? So when both Russians goalies came over here, right? My point is within 3 days, one of the two of them or their agents had to tell one of the two of them, I got news for you guys. One of you is riding a bus. I don't know who it is, but one of the two of you is riding a bus around the northeast of the United States for probably a year, maybe 2. It ain't going to be Fedotov, right? Because he's going to leave because he's older. So what I'm saying is if he's Kolosov, does he leave? Like, is he doing the same thing? Kolosov may be thinking to himself, you know what? If he leaves the Flyers and there's a breach of contract, maybe he goes back and becomes an even bigger prospect in another year or 2. I don't know. Listen, I am saying this. I admire what Danny said about it. There's no time with what's going on with this team to put up with the bullshit that comes with dealing with a malcontent Russian. And I've seen lots of them over the years. Everybody has. No one maybe is going to say it quite like Snow the Goalie, but that's what it is. It's an angry Russian. He didn't feel like he got treated right. And he's like, you know what, the hell with it? I'm going to go home. I'm not dealing with this shit. That's it in a nutshell. So his own agent is probably like, damn, what do I do? He's there. He's not coming. And Danny's like, you know what? The hell with it. I'm not going to deal with this stuff anymore. We're going to have players here that want to play and are going to be excited to play. And the same thing with Ryan Johansson. I know it's an injury situation, but that's the other part he was talking about, that presser yesterday too. But it sure seems like, you know what? It's our way or the highway. Deal with it.
Yeah,
and I like that.
I do. That one's fine. Of
course it's fine because you don't think of him as a prospect in Ryan Johansson, right? And I get it.
He's not. He was a means to an end to get something in a trade.
I'm sorry. Yeah. He's Belarusian. Yeah.
I was just about to say for all the geopolitical people
former
out there.
Soviet Union country, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all good.
I mean, I don't know. Does Russia believe that Belarus is actually part of Russia? We do not know. Anyway, the thing, and I saw that comment from Derek Mayfield
I think it's I popped that up on the screen for a reason.
Yeah. That Kolosov is getting way too much attention for someone who may not be end up being anything mad.
I agree.
The reason that it matters, though, we talked about this last week. We're not relitigating this. If this is the case that he wanted to play in the NHL, and if we go beyond influence that someone else could have had from the hockey world on what led to Cutter Gauthier not wanting to be here, if we go with the simple version of this, that he might have wanted an assurance that he was going to be on the Flyers from opening night last year, or at the very least wanted to know that the Flyers would commit to burning a year of his ELC so he could play 1 or 2 games at the end of the regular season. That would then be 2 players, very different circumstances, very different situations, that have ultimately wanted or expected a certain kind of treatment and immediate playing time at the NHL level. On one hand, you can respect it from the Flyers side that we are not setting this awful precedent. And on the other hand, we have to be fair about what this organization viewed these guys as being over a calendar year ago. Gauthier, when we sat down with Dan Hilferty last summer, mentioned Gauthier and Michkov together as being building blocks. So he isn't a throwaway prospect. He's not somebody that was we're going to see if he eventually turns into something. This organization was talking about him in much more elaborate detail. They thought he was a bigger part of what this thing was going to be. Kolosov, while not viewed as the heir apparent, while not being discussed about the way that Fedotov was 2 years ago about could he actually push Carter Hart for some playing time? He was still being viewed as a young goalie who played a different style than what a Fedotov does and would be of interest to this team to see what he looks like in North America. So these aren't non-zero prospects. These aren't late round picks that had no NHL aspirations. The concerning thing is, are we now seeing a scenario, and Bundy, you've talked about this before, are we now seeing something where there's an entitlement that's working its way into the NHL? This doesn't appear to be happening with 10 or 15 other teams in the league, and it's probably exacerbated by the fact that it's happened in an 8-month span.
Well, it happened with Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, but 2 of
right?
2 of the prospects that this organization were definitely interested in have opted not to stay here.
There's a real reason why there's an entitlement. And the entitlement is not because there's an abundance of amazing players. It's because there's an abundance of mediocre players. And the mediocre goaltender groups himself in with all the other mediocre guys. I'm telling you, it's human nature. It's a case study. You could watch guys walk in and look at their own body language about how they feel about their own games. I have probably too many kids myself, and I've watched them grow up, but I know exactly what it is. When a goalie's saying this, he's not saying, Fedotov is better than me. I want to go out and try to compete for it. Or Ursan, I could become the starter ahead of him. He's saying to himself, geez, I'm not that good, and neither is he, but I'm not going to deal with this shit right now. I'm going to go back overseas and go play back over there. I'm telling you, that's what the entitlement is. And when they sell the entitlement as part of themselves saying, oh, I am that good, that's what they're trying to sell to everybody else, that I'm better than that guy, by creating a perception, when the perception is not a reality. It is what it is. When you build up a repertoire or your own resume over time, that speaks volumes. You got a goalie like Shesterkin, Sorokin, guys that have those type of resumes, and they've done that, but they're not frauds. So I always ask myself, and it seems to be when you see a lot of players, go look at a lot of the player issues they have around the league. Sometimes it's a high-end guy that wants out of a certain team, like a Matthew Tkachuk or Johnny Gaudreau, going to Columbus and then off to Florida. There's more money, the United States. But really, when you look at guys that are vying for the same type of spots, some of them are overselling themselves to people, to the public, thinking that they're more than what they really are. I don't have any concerns about Kolosov. He doesn't want to be here. good riddance and good luck. I don't really care because we focus on who's on the ice every night, and it'll be Urson and it'll be Fedotov, and we'll see how that works itself out.
Now there are maybe like 2 quick points here to wrap this part of the conversation up. Dynamo Minsk's starter apparently suffered an injury, has now been placed on their injured list.
Who's that, Russ? I'm sorry?
What was that?
Who was that again?
Dynamo Minsk's goalie,
yeah.
their starter, the team that Kolosov went back to skate with. No, it's okay. The goalie
did you see how it happened? Did you see who was
I did not.
for it?
Did he wake up with broken leg from falling into drain? What happened?
It was an incident, or I shouldn't say incident because that makes it sound nefarious, but it was an on ice incident with Wade Allison.
Get the hell out!
That's what I heard. I mean, I didn't see it, but
wait. So
yeah.
Wade Allison is playing sleeper cell for wow. Okay. So and Allison's not hurt. Okay. Anyway, so Dynamo Minsk starting goalie is now injured. Kolosov has been skating there. The conversation was had about could the Flyers look to toll his contract. In the grand scheme of things, it's bad right now. It looks bad for the organization or bad on the player. If that now opens up a spot and he can go and play consistently in the KHL for a year, he's 22, 23. If ultimately what happens is they toll his contract, it doesn't count against them. It doesn't count against the ELC. He goes back there for a year, almost with the Flyers' blessing. And then he comes back next year. We see a year of Fedotov. We see what happens there. We see what happens with Urson. Is it really the worst scenario? Or do you think at this point, the team looks at this as like almost irreconcilable differences, and now they do look to like a team like Vancouver that might need help in goal and say like, all right, you know what, like a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, we are a conditional pick. We're fine to move off this because we think that there's just no saving this.
Well, I think that you look at it from 2 perspectives, and I think that both of them are fair for the Flyers. The first being that if somebody's willing to overpay you for this guy for whatever reason, and I'm not sure that there's a team that's going to really do that, right? But if they're willing to, then go ahead. Yeah, sure. We'll take that high draft pick for this guy. Thank you very much. We have plenty of goaltending depth in the organization. You have good luck with him. Good luck with what you're dealing with this guy. But for the second thing that they could do, and I think is just as fair, is with a Russian player or any your international player over there, you can just hold on to his rights for forever. And so basically you could just keep the guy from ever playing in the NHL. And it sounds petty, but it really, if you wanted to sit there and go, this is how it works in the best professional league of the sport. You want to go stay and play over there in the KHL and make your living in the KHL, by all means, go right ahead. Go do it. But if you're coming over here, you have to be with us. And that's it. So it's a little bit different than the situation was, a little bit different. It's a lot of bit different than from the situation was last year with Cutter Gauthier, who you could eventually lose. But in this case, you don't ever have to lose Kolosov if you don't want to. He could go on your reserve list for perpetuity.
All right, so now we can move off of goalies. We can move off of Kolosov. I think we've exhausted that conversation. I will point out
25 minutes of Kolosov.
I will point out.
I
know. I will point out that we will give superfan Eric a kickback, but in the event that the Flyers do move off of Kolosov, I have a design already for Kolosov, and it will be available on shop.snowthegoalie.com. Don't you worry. We'll pair it with the Quitter Gauthier shirt, and we can make it a bundle package. A discount you buy both.
Trade him to Anaheim, and we can have a fun value on January 11th.
Eric told me he doesn't want to be known as the concerned fan anymore.
Oh,
I said, well,
got to come up with a new name.
You're out.
Yeah, what's his new name going to be? He can't shut down a name that he's been given, and then
you can't just go on and create your own name. Like, you're the concerned fan, super fan Eric.
Yeah,
you don't like it? Out.
Yeah. I think now that we've gotten the Kolosov conversation out of the way, I do think that we would probably touch on a little bit of what we saw last week in the opening of camp. And in order to maybe set the stage for that, it probably does make sense now to be the time that we throw this to the Sean Couturier interview, because not only does he talk about his battle back to the NHL, coming through 2 back surgeries, but he also does kind of give us a look inside at what to expect from the team this year. his relationship with John Tortorella, and Matvei Michkov as well. Ant?
I just because I just saw it pop up on the screen, and I feel like before you get to the interview, you need to explain this because it was your idea.
What was?
Ryan is asking, does Sean Couturier really need a clean slate? And I know that that's not what you were referring to, but I'll let you explain.
Well, the interview is about to explain what the clean slate is. Because clearly somebody believes that someone needs a clean slate. Is it Coots? Is it someone else? Now we throw it to the interview with Philadelphia Flyers captain Sean Couturier to learn so much more. Buckle in. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, but now, well, it's the Captain's Podcast. We are joined by the captain of your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers, Sean Couturier. Welcome to Snow the Goalie.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, Coots. It's like it's your. I think this is your first time with us actually as a guest on the show. We've done interviews in the locker room, but I think this is the first time that you've been on the show. So we're thrilled to finally have you after 6 years. I don't know why it's taken so long.
Yeah, definitely is the first time with you guys on the podcast for sure.
So it's really cool. I guess we were just kind of talking briefly off air. It's just to kind of update everybody, as we're getting ready for training camp to start for you guys. Just how are you feeling? Because we know last year you went through a lot of stuff physically. How are you feeling? How are you looking at getting started here as we get ready for the new season?
Yeah, right now I feel good. Like you said, last year as the year went on, kind of got a little banged up and fought through some little nagging injuries. Needed surgery to fix things up after the year, but now I'm back feeling great and ready to go. It's been a long summer and just excited to get going again.
Coots, I had when I looked at last year, and we talked about it a lot. I know you don't hear us when we're down on the ice, but we're up on the balcony. We see every game, every play. And I'm going to say this, and it's not to put you out of your element at all, but I don't think the Flyers would have been where they were last year without you. And I said that many times, as did Anthony and Russ. Like by the 55 game mark, and looking at the year before with you injured and a couple other guys that were out, I just didn't think this team could have gotten to where they were last year in the standings without a healthy Sean Couturier leadership, the guy that I've known for a long time now. And some stuff, and listen, I've been around too. I've been around the league a long time as a player, and I've gone through stuff. It's hard, though, for me to get past what transpired, let's say, the last 27 games. You get named captain, and almost immediately it looked like you had a coach that had a gripe or wasn't pleased with the way you were playing. And the timing of it, to me and to a lot of people, did not look good. It didn't look good from the standpoint of a player who's a new captain, been here this long, and the way the wheels came off the bus down the home stretch left a sour taste in people's mouth. So I guess my question is what was real? The first 55 games or some semblance of the last 27?
Well, definitely. I think like you said, the first half of the year looked really good for us. We were playing well, and I was feeling good. I think down the stretch, like I said, got hurt a little bit. I went through a stretch where I wasn't playing that great, and definitely some other guys were playing better than me. And down the stretch is just tough personally, but as a team also, I think we fell off a little bit the way we were playing earlier in the year. And as the speed of the game kind of picked up as the year went on, we didn't maybe adapt as well, but no excuses. I really think we should have made the playoffs, honestly, because we were in such a great position and lost some big games late in the year. That losing streak late in the year, if we just win 2 or 3 of those games against the opponents we're playing against, we would be in. So it's tough to accept, but I hope everyone kind of has that bad taste in their mouth and use that as motivation and kind of learn from it going into this year.
Yeah, and I think with you, Coots, I think the team, if you're healthy and things go through, I think this team is a playoff team, and you get a look at a lot of young guys at a playoff series and a playoff round, especially in Philly, how we know how crazy it is and how exciting playoffs are. My question is, though, again, just to follow up, what have you done? What do you think will be different this year, hitting that 50, 55 game mark where you're going to be able to help carry people home that last part of it. And I'm not saying it's all on you. It's not. It's a team game. But you, to me, were the centerpiece and the core of the uplifting season that the team had early. What is it in for you for the last, say, 30 games to make sure you're physically there and that everybody else follows suit?
Yeah, I think I learned a little bit about, my body, adapted a little bit of my training, especially after the back surgeries, missing 2 years. It's almost like if I forgot, what it was like playing as the year went on. The pace is different. Even the year I played was just the first 29 games, I believe. So that's, not saying it's easy hockey, but as the year gets going, it gets harder and harder. So it almost feels like, I don't know if my body forgot how hard it was at times. But last year, I came into camp a little heavier, a little more bulked up to try to, sustain a full 82 game season. And honestly, it might have helped me a little bit physically, but I feel the speed of the game. I know I'm not one of the fastest players out there, fastest skaters out there. So I think it was important this year to, cut back down to where I was before the injuries, around 205. Last year I was like 210, 212 coming into camp. So I think it's going to help me down the stretch and with my speed of the game and keep up and just feel good, with the puck and making plays and being at a lighter weight. And, like the game's different, I feel, than it was 13 years ago when I first came in. There was still some of those big, heavy D-mans that were 230, 240, just waiting to bear hug you in the corners. And you needed that extra weight to kind of muscle off guys. But now the games is so fast and not as physical. So I think as I get older, it's just important to stay around that weight and stay so I can keep up and keep that pace of play.
Well, how much do you think the team will use? And you look for silver lining, right, Coots, and you sit there and go, how much of a silver lining is it that the team learns from the failure at the end? I mean, it was a team that had not many guys who had experienced winning before. I mean, obviously you had, maybe a couple others, but for the most part, this was a new experience for a lot of these guys. And how much can they take from that and use as fuel as you go forward here into 24, 25 and beyond?
Yeah, but I think we can't look too far ahead either of ourselves. I think, a lot of guys had some really good years last year. Young guys, took a step forward, had good years, established themselves as NHL players and proved that they can play here, full time. I think as you go through the years and gain experience, it's not that easy year after year. You got to prove yourself every year and get better and do little things to gain an edge and improve your game. Because if you're just, satisfied with the, your first year or so, you kind of stay stuck there and don't necessarily improve as a team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how all our young guys kind of, come into camp and prove that they want more. They want to, become better. And as a team, I think we'll grow more faster if everyone kind of takes that, keeps taking that step forward.
I mean, you mentioned the young guys. Obviously, the one that everyone's looking at is Matvei Michkov, who's trying to break into the league as a teenager, which you yourself did. So I know that there's a language barrier there, but just in theory, like as you're trying to, I guess, lead this guy and like help him as the leader on the team, what is it that you can use from your experience to try to help him to figure out this league and to figure out how to make an impact, maybe not overextend, but to, I guess, live in the moment and be able to compete at this level at that age?
Well, I think at that age first the important thing I think is just to make him feel comfortable. Like you said, there's a language barrier, probably a little culture shock too. Also, he's playing on North American ice, maybe for the few times he's played here, but these are all adaptations that he's going to have to go through. But I think the important thing is he feels comfortable and feels confidence, doesn't lose that confidence. And he seems to be a pretty confident kid already. So, just meeting him a few times already, he's. I even heard from the guys that worked out with him over the summer. His English has already improved, and he's feeling comfortable more and more. And those are all positive signs. You just want him to keep gaining that confidence and make sure he stays that same player that he's always been, I guess.
I want to take you back though, Coots, to when you were that age. What was your mindset like coming into the NHL at that point? And at what point, when you're playing NHL games for the first time at that age, does it dawn on you that, oh, this is even another level that I have to get to and maintain and sustain for a longer period of time? Like, what is that first season like? Because I want everybody to be excited about Michkov, but I also want them to temper expectations at the same time, because you know what it's like to be that young and playing in this league, and it's not easy.
Yeah, I think we're in a little bit of different situations. When I first came in, I think we had a really good team, so it's kind of hard to find my role, my chair coming in. I had to adapt a little bit of my game to make sure I made the team, really, because we were contenders at that time. They had just signed Yogs, a couple free agents, and we were, we wanted to win, so just to stick around for me was a day-by-day process where I just came in and tried to improve my game and prove myself that I belonged here and that I can, help the team in any way that I could. And, back then it was more of probably a defensive role with all the firepower we had offensively. So I think him coming in, he's we haven't really hit in it. We're kind of rebuilding. We're in reconstruction, and he's a big part of that. And he's probably, like you said, the main piece. But at the same time, there's going to be an adaptation. Like I've said earlier, the culture, moving here, language, playing on a smaller ice, those can change a little bit or affect you. But I'm pretty confident he'll get used to it. And and also like I said, it's a long season, 82 games. I'm not sure if he's played such a long season, so there's some ups, some downs. It's how you get through them and manage that. And I think consistency is one hard thing to do as a young player, to be consistent for 82 games. And it's definitely going to be probably a learning process. But like I said, he looks good, and hopefully keeps being good.
Kus, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit, going back to Michkov a little bit. Again, because if someone would have asked us as Sean Couturier as an 18-year-old, hey, what kind of a player do you think he is? I would say our first year, we probably would have had a differing view of what we were told you were. We were told you were an offensive juggernaut coming out of junior, if you can remember back that far. And you ended up in your first year becoming an amazing defensive player. And I don't always know if you had that ingrained in you in junior, because you had such great offense. But when I look at a guy like Michkov and well-rounded Russian players, I'll put you on the spot here. I look at a guy like Kucherov, Datsuk, Fedorov. And I'm not talking yet about the guys like Ovechkin and Briere and Mogilny, the pure goal scorers. Who would you say that, watching him, that he may have the best chance of being, without comparing him? Like, if you say, okay, yeah, he reminds me a little bit of Kucherov, the way he skates. Fedorov was another guy, but all those players played good two-way hockey, is what I'm trying to get at. And that's something that you learned coming into this league pretty quickly.
Yeah, like you said, it's I don't want to start comparing and naming names, but
come on, Coots.
But even those guys that you name, like Kucherov, I think he was in junior at 19. He was still playing major junior in Rouyn-Noranda, I think, at 19. He played in the AHL a little bit at 20. It's not an automatic as an 18, 19-year-old that you're going to dominate. It takes time, and sometimes stats can get a little tricky, because you compare other guys, but they come in a little later where they're more ready, and their opportunity comes a little quicker than if you come in at 18, 19. So I think it's all different situations. It's hard to compare, but you can tell, and then skating with him that when he's got some time and space, he makes plays, and looking at him, playing with him a little bit, played with great players over the years. Jake and G. He seems to be up there with the skill wise of those guys. That's for sure.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Coots, I know you guys don't officially start camp till next week, or this week, but you guys have been skating for a little bit. Anybody come in and kind of like look even better to you, just the way that they're moving, they're skating, the way they've worked out over the summer, kind of come in here and be like, oh, wow, I'm excited to play with this guy this year because he's looking even better than he did a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, all the guys seem to have, taken a step. I'd have to go with a guy like Bobby Brink, who wasn't quite a regular last year, but he sure looks good. You can tell he's, same with him. He's always been an offensive minded guy, probably, and coming in doesn't get quite the opportunity right away, but I'm sure he's going to get one here. And he definitely looks good out there.
I want to take you back really quick to something that you said earlier, and it's something that, like, on a human level, a lot of times I don't think fans like really take into account. You had 2 back surgeries. Besides the fact that, like, I don't know, maybe there was a moment where you wondered if you were ever going to get back on the ice. Let's start there. Like, did you at any point when going through those surgeries have the legitimate kind of fear sweep over you of like, oh no, this might actually be it. Like, there might not be a way to get back to playing at the level. Let's start there. Like, did that ever kind of cross your mind?
Yeah, I'd have to say when I had to do my second surgery and going through the ups and downs again of rehabbing, there was some tough moments, some questions at times I would go through my head, but it was never really an option to quit, to be honest. It was just, you always have those thoughts like, hey, maybe I won't be the same player. Maybe I won't be able to do this again or that. And, but it was always kind of like quickly, turn the page and get back to work and move on. I was always motivated to, push myself to the limit and try to get back to being the same player, if not better.
Now, the second part of this is like the human level to it. You and I are roughly the same age. We both have at least one kid who's virtually the same age, like I think almost down to the month. As a player, when you're going through those surgeries, like there's obviously the career part of it. Is there ever the part of it, or was there a part of it where you said, I would much rather just make sure that I'm healthy to be a dad, more so than be focused on being Sean Couturier, the hockey player? Like, did that part ever cross your mind of like, some things are more important than others? Like, where were you there?
I wouldn't say I was quite there, but I would say it was more, like I said, a motivation to kind of, as she gets older, to kind of know exactly, who I am, what I did, what I love doing, playing hockey. So that was kind of like a motivation to get back out there and play again. So she could kind of witness it and experience seeing me play.
And then there's the last part to this before I throw this back to Bundy.
Yeah, one question I have. Yeah.
Does this, like the way that last year went, where you really were, I mean, I will say very frankly, as we did on this show, without you, and Bundy noted this before, without you, like the first part of the season is probably the disaster that we expected it to be. So much of this did ride on you. Knowing what you went through to go through those 2 surgeries, the personal element to it, the professional, working yourself back into it, to watch the way that things did transpire, that being named captain, something that I have to imagine had gone through your head at some point. Shortly thereafter, like there's a weird thing that kind of happens. There's getting called out by the coach in public. Was there ever a point last year where you're just like, yo, it's kind of bullshit. Like, let me be a player and let me do what I'm supposed to do here. Like, was there ever the frustration? I mean, I'm not saying like flame anybody here, but like, was there ever like the frustration last year of just like, let me go out and be a player. Let me do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think I didn't kind of shy away by showing my frustration at times last year over, the last 2-3 months. Yeah, those were tough moments in my career so far, and just trying to learn from it and move on. Honestly, it's coming into this year. It's a clean slate, and just trying to get back to where I should be and be the player I am.
Coots, I can just safely tell you that Russ actually with the kids, they can actually bounce Russ on their knees. So it's a whole different dichotomy. It's not the end of the world. I wanted to make sure there was a separation between the two of you, and that was it. For me,
one of us has had 2 back surgeries, got back to playing the NHL. One of us gets a stress fracture in their foot and doesn't walk around for 6 weeks. There's a reason that you're the pro, and there's a reason I talk into a mic. All right, now that we've gotten that one squared away.
My last comment about coaching, I had Hitchcock for 4 years. I tried to turn the page every year too. Every year I tried to turn the page. Coots, what are you most excited about this year coming up? What is the part for you where you're saying, here, I'm coming into year 13 or whatever it is. It's a lot of years. You're the captain now. You get a fresh slate with the C on your jersey. What are you most excited about? What are maybe your anxieties a little bit about for you personally and for the team in this upcoming year?
Well, I'm excited about our lineup. We haven't really made any changes, additions, except for maybe Michkov. But, if I look at anyway, our roster offensively, whether you're on the first line or third line, you're going to be playing with some good players. That's for sure. So a lot of us are a lot of the offense is young, but everyone's kind of growing and becoming established players. And it's exciting to see that grow, and hopefully we can take another step forward here. Ant,
are you good? Usually
I'm good. We usually. So I was going to ask that question, but then Bundy snaked me, right? So I let him ask it. He's the veteran. So I was just going to thank Sean because I said to Joe, 20 minutes. He gave us 21. So we're right on time here. I don't want to hold up Sean's time, but I do want to thank you, Coots, for coming on finally after all these years, coming on Snow the Goalie. Appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck. And
I want to thank Coots too for coming on the TV every time I needed him to. Him and Wayne Simmons, I couldn't have done it without him. Honest to God. And I will be forever indebted to him and Simmer for always being so gracious and helping me out when I needed an interview on the end of the bench. No matter how good, no matter how bad, I had those 2 guys in there. They will forever be a rock star to me for the help they gave me.
All right, here's the last question. And since you said that, Bundy, here's the last question for you, Coots. Did Bundy ever ask a question on live TV where you just were rolling your eyes like, why do I have to answer this on the camera right now? Did he ever?
No, not really. No, he was always pretty good.
See the brotherhood we have amongst former players, Anthony.
I'll never throw you under the bus, Bundy. It's all good. Right. But Coots, thanks again. We really do appreciate your time. Best of luck, and like I said, we'll catch you on the show at some point down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sean.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Couturier, the captain of your team. Now, we're going to dissect this a little bit, but let us know in the comments what you think. And I think I saw a few things going on over there. Clean slate, huh? Clean slate, Bundy. You mentioned that you tried to turn the page with Hitch before.
I was partially joking. I mean, but Hitch was. The thing I'm talking about when you get a guy like that, they just wear you out, man. They wear you out and wear you out. And you kind of alluded to the fact at the end, when can you just be a hockey player? Sometimes if a guy's playing well for 8 or 9 games in a row, just leave them alone. And if they're not, then try to find out what's going on if they're dealing with something. But there's guys that when you're playing well, they still just want to wear you the fuck out. And that's the first F-bomb I used today because I had too many. And I just wanted to say it just like that because they do. It just gets old and tiring. And it's and I know somebody's arguing over jobs and stuff. Believe me, guys, when you're in the NHL, it's a glorious job and no one's telling you it isn't. But I'll tell you what. As pros, people deal with a lot of bullshit too, even as players, as coaches, from players and vice versa. So I get what he is. Just when can you just be a hockey player and not deal with all the other stuff? And I think it was a good question, Russ. And that's what I meant with Hitch. Hitch was a good coach. John Tortorella is a good coach. But there's a part of that there's a whole package that it comes with that. And
listen,
that's it.
No matter what people do for a living, I saw people going back and forth in the comments. Just remember,
that's crazy.
No matter how good or how bad your job is and everything, just remember, chances are that if you make a mistake, or even if you don't, you're not going to have to listen to this in your ear.
Well, see, and I was going to ask Bundy like a legit question.
Oh, and I also forgot. There we go. We have our
I was holding them back.
Yeah. I was going to ask a legit question, and you pulled out the
I'm sorry. Do you want me to set you up with something much more serious, Ant? Are you okay? Can you pull it together? Can you be a professional, Ant?
I know. So, Buddy, what I wanted to ask, because I think it's pertinent with this situation with Coots and Torts, is, and as someone who did, and I know you did legitimately try to turn the page with Hitch every year. Like you have to almost, because like in your job, like, hey, he's still here, I'm still here. We got to find a way to make it work. What is the process like? There, how there's stages of grief. Are there stages of dealing with a tough boss in that regard? In other words, like, do you kind of laugh it off for a month? Do you sit, or are you immediately pissed off at him again? Or how does it work? Like, do you reach a breaking point, the next year afterwards, or like how does that play? How does that emotionally play?
If you think there's no carry, so I'll tell you this, and that's a great question. You go in with the assumption there's no carryover from the year before, but there's always carryover, always, whether you want to believe it or not. It'll come back up like a seed in the ground. It'll grow as fast as you can imagine. The problem is with coaches is like, there's a way to handle kids, I think, in a lot of different ways where you have to let them know we need more out of you. And here's how I think we can help you get there, instead of screaming. Now, I grew up in an era where screaming and yelling was part of a household. It was part of the hockey rink, the coaching. I mean, you did too, Anthony. Like that's the way things were, right? We were raised tough, and I think there's a different understanding of how people are perceived and how people are treated. You can't treat anybody like now. Like Torts is the last of it, really. When you look at the league, he's the oldest coach in the league now by far. And when you look at a lot of that, a lot of it's ingrained from his past coaching that you just can't change or flip a script on. I don't have a problem with a coach calling me in and saying you've been playing like shit and I need more out of you. That is perfectly fine. And most of the time the player knows that. It's when you nitpick over things that aren't that important, where the coach loses a player. The other thing where you'll lose a coach more than any single thing else is when the coach does something to the player and he himself does not answer for it or have any accountability. If you recall last year during the conversations with Coots going through it, we would see Brad Shaw out on the podium during the Coots scratching. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to stir anything. That's a matter of fact, right?
Yes.
Where was he? Why didn't he want to talk to the media? So if you're gonna sow what you sow, then you got to be able to answer for that too. And I would have a lot more respect for coaches that actually took the brutal questions about something. Coots is a popular guy. He's popular with the fans. He's popular with the media, and he's a good person, and I can vouch for that. So believe me, if we took notice of it, I can promise you what other guys in that locker room took notice of as well.
That's kind of why it was a little bit surprising that there wasn't more discourse, I think, behind the scenes about whether or not they were going to make a coaching change.
We don't know that because we weren't in the room, but there's rumors fly, Russ. Rumors fly.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that, like, you just take the human element into it, right? Like, of all the people that have played for this team for, like, let's say the 6 or 7 years or whatever, since Ant and I started covering this together, the one guy who I think had like the most universal approval was Couturier. And he wasn't the most vocal guy. I don't think that he's viewed the same way that like Giroux was as a captain, but like very high approval rating in that locker room. When you essentially embarrass him like the coach did at the end of last year, that isn't going to resonate well in that locker room. There are going to be hurt feelings. There are going to be people who want to see the coach gone, who are on that team. So I think that it's even more than just having to make amends and, going clean slate with Couturier himself. There are a lot of guys in that locker room who probably did lose respect for the coach and are going to have to, like, someone's going to have to figure out a way to smooth that over if it hasn't already been done. Now, to your point, Bundy, we're not in the locker room. We don't know. Did Torts have a, mea culpa moment? Did he have a moment where he reached out to other leaders on that team to try to smooth things over, to explain why he did what he did. Maybe we don't know that, but you can't go into a year like this where things are important, where there are going to be a lot of young guys cycled through here, where you do have a Matvei Michkov who's now here. You can't allow this team to become a toxic cesspool because the coach and the players aren't on the same page. And I think that's like the real concern here. If you're a fan, whether you like Torts or not, that negativity cannot permeate that locker room this year. It doesn't help anyone.
I think this year the organization will look at stuff like that a little bit differently than they did a year ago. And I say that because it's a lot easier to have a lesser tolerance for that kind of stuff when there's only 1 year remaining on a contract, as opposed to when there's 2 years remaining on a contract. And that's just the reality of business, friends. All right, let's just be honest about it. Like, you may not like the way that the coach is coaching, but if you owe him $10 million, you're gonna bite your lip for a year until you can pay off part of it. But that maybe it gets to a point eventually where it's like, okay, now we weigh the two, right? And you sit there and say, at what point do we sit there and say we won't tolerate that as much anymore? If that makes sense, right? Like I think that honestly, and it's not a knock on Torts as a coach, because as Bundy said, he's a very good coach. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to sit there and say, we have all these coaches that we've had here who we're paying all this money. They were paying Alain Vigneault last year, right? Still, they're paying Tortorella, right? $5 million a year, whatever it is, $4 or $5, whatever it was. I forget if one of them was $4, one of them was $5, whatever it is. But it's a lot of money to be tied up in coaches that, if you made a change and then bring somebody else in, probably a similar contract or close to it, that's a lot of money to be paying for coaching. And 2/3 of it would be people who wouldn't be here, right? So there's a certain tolerance that you accept up front that maybe as that contract gets closer to its conclusion, you don't accept nearly as much.
There is a counterpoint to that, though, and it came from Briere. This is actually the thing that I was not concerned with. I'm not going to turn this into a big thing. It did come up to Danny in that press conference about Tortorella's reputation, about Michkov. Michkov is pretty widely regarded as a guy who doesn't accept mediocrity, can be a little bit of a hothead if you believe the reports that came out about some of the veteran players that played with him in the KHL. This was not viewed as a negative, by the way. It was spun by a few people in North America with an anti-Philadelphia bias who have a national platform. Those people made it sound like it was a bad thing. But like Briere said, in essence, Torts has blow-ups with everybody. It's just part of doing business with Torts.
Right.
While I get it, and while I understand that you're going to put that out there, I don't know. Am I crazy for just saying maybe that's not the best way to go about it? Maybe accepting that as an inevitability might not be the greatest look from day one. Or is it really them just trying to set the expectation that it's going to happen, fans, we're keeping an eye on it, don't overreact when it inevitably happens.
Look, it's just like this, Russ. I need you to be the officiant at my wedding. After Saturday, I can start thinking about Bundy and I moving on in a different direction on this show, right? I mean, that's it's a similar kind of situation. We need you for a certain point. All kidding aside,
wow.
All kidding aside,
there wasn't a lot of kidding in that. All right, guys. I'm out.
See what he does to us, Bundy? He just bails out. He just leaves.
I'm a quitter. You can call me Gautier from now on. Russ Gautier.
Yeah.
Continue.
But the point is that they're in business, in all business, not just sports, but in all business, there are degrees of what you're willing to accept from your employees as far as their workability. For the value that you're paying them, right? And say, we expect this production, and there might be a flaw here or a flaw there, but we'll accept those flaws because we still think that there's value to us as a business. And so the Flyers look at it and say there is value to having John Tortorella as their coach, both from a development standpoint, from getting guys playing the right way standpoint, and also considering the money that they're paying him. At some point, though, and it's not just with Tortorella, it's with any coach, it's with anybody in any business, that value diminishes to a point where the organization or the business says, okay, we're probably better off going in a different direction. And, we're not getting the value now that we were getting previously with this employee. And so therefore, I think that that's kind of where the Flyers are always going to be in that and any team's going to always be in that process with a coach or a manager or whatever the case might be, or even with a player. But the reality of it is that I think as you get closer to the closer you get to the end of Tortorella's contract, the less leeway I think he's going to have within the organization to do the things that he does the way that he does them. Does that make sense?
It does.
I totally do. But again, and you're talking about the business part of it. And I said it last year on the show. When you finish the way the Flyers finished, that cost them millions of dollars in playoff revenue. Millions and millions of dollars. And that was, you think about, we said it, they needed a couple loser points and they're in the playoffs. That's all they needed. And it didn't happen against shitty teams like Columbus. Listen, the wheels fell off the bus. And what's going to happen here now, the blooming flower is Michkov, right? In front of everybody's eyes. This is a plain English. What does the rest of this look like as you hit in? Because it's hard to hit a reset button. I've been there before. Look at the Eagles the other day. They did the same crap that they did at the end of last year. And it reared its head again in glorious style in game 2 of this year. I forget the Eagles. My point is it's hard for things to disappear. The one good thing with hockey is if there is a sport that it goes away a little quicker, it is hockey, because guys have, I think, shorter memories when it comes to stuff like this. So it will depend on the start of the year. That is going to be pivotal, guys. If they start the year the way they finished last year, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It really is. If they come out of the gate like 2-8 or 2-7-1, it's going to be really interesting.
And I think that you're spot on with that, Bundy. And this is why I'm having a hard time kind of wrapping my head around exactly what this team is going to be, because you listen to Coots talk about it, and and there's a real belief inside that organization that they can take that next step this year, and you want to believe it, right? You want to believe them. You're adding the talent, right? You okay, fine, maybe you are getting that good, but I don't. As an outside observer, I don't see that step, right? I think that there are, and I always do this on my baseball podcast with Bob, and I say we don't look around the league enough as people who are fans of one team, right? We don't look around and see what's happening everywhere else. And the one thing that, if I look around the NHL, and with the exception of Columbus, of course, they had the tragedy of losing Johnny Gaudreau, which makes it even worse. But with the exception of Columbus, I think every team in the Metro is going to be more competitive this year than they were a year ago. And I think that doesn't bode well for the Flyers, because the Flyers stayed the course because they had to. They got to get rid of some bad contracts and bad money, and they stayed the course. And as Coots said, all they did was add Michkov, right, to last year's team. It's basically the same team as last year. We don't know what we have in the goaltending with this team. The defense was not good as constituted at the end of the year once you got rid of Sean Walker, and you basically brought that same defense back. The power play it has to get better because it was historically bad, but how much better? I don't know how much better it's going to be. I mean, it's got to be, you assume it's going to be better with a healthy Drysdale and adding Michkov. It's going to be better, right? But does it go from being the worst in the sport to top 10? No, it's only going to be a little bit better. So I guess the question that I have is, when I look at it and say, I don't necessarily know that this team's going to be all that good at all. And at some point, when, where does Torts start to lose it because the team it may not be that good? And at what point does he get, do they turn him off? Do they just sit there and say, we're not responding to this as players? And I think that that's the thing that when we're talking about this, when you say it could be sooner rather than later if you go off to a terrible start, I kind of agree with that. Like I'm with
or
you.
has it already happened? That's the thing.
Yeah.
You see, that's the thing. That's what we don't know, right? And I know what you're saying, Ab, but that's the other piece. Has that already happened? And so that's what I don't know. And that's what we'll find out. We'll find out by how they respond on the ice. That's the great thing with hockey. You can tell how a team's playing based on how everything's going on and that universe around that team. And
this is why, like two things. Bundy, you mentioned earlier that the team missed out on millions of dollars because of the playoffs. And I would also argue the inverse, which is because they were in that potential playoff spot for so long and they didn't go up and get an elite talent, they might have cost themselves millions of dollars down the line to be a legitimate, like, deep playoff team. Now that's not as much of a guarantee. Ant rolls his eyes, but he's Captain Mediocre. But like that part notwithstanding, this is why last year we talked about the fact that Tort's pressing the buttons that he was what a coach does, allowing him to be the focal point, allowing him to be the guy that everybody galvanizes against down the stretch last year. That is a card you play one time. That is a card you really do get to play one time with one locker room. And it's typically for a team that is on the cusp of going to the Stanley Cup, of a team that has legitimate cup aspirations. He blew that. He shot that shot last year. That shit doesn't fly again this year because now they've all seen what it looks like. They've seen that playbook. And so I don't want this to all of a sudden, now it does feel like we're trending very negative about like where things are going to go. But like in fairness, and you mentioned all the teams in the Met being better and you kind of, throw Columbus to the side. Columbus doesn't have a good roster. Columbus made the announcement today. They're going to be wearing the sticker on the helmet with the two doves and with both Gaudreau's numbers. They're going to have a Gaudreau patch on their sweater. I'm not saying that there's going to be divine intervention here that's going to make Columbus a legitimate playoff team. But at least at the start of the year, I fully expect Columbus to be significantly more competitive and for them to have a legitimate rallying cry, not about being galvanized against their coach, but instead being galvanized by a tragedy that's going to pull them together. So
that's fair.
That's fair for the beginning of the season. Look at it.
Yeah.
We just look at it and like, somebody brought up in the comments, you don't have Carter Hart playing above and beyond like last year, where Sam Ersson gets to be the backup and he gets to play above his head for the first 40 or whatever games. Goalie is probably the position that we're going to see the regression to the mean. And that ultimately, even if the power play gets better, probably means that the Flyers are not nearly as good to start the year and probably don't get themselves into playoff contention. That's my macro view.
Remember how last year Bundy and I, and you were so fascinated with this, Rush. You did a whole opening of an episode about it. Whereas Bundy and I kind of almost nailed the start of the season, record wise, like almost to the point. Like we got like the start really, really down. If you look at the October schedule for the Flyers this year, I don't think that they're sneaking up on a lot of teams, and I think it's a tougher schedule. You start in Vancouver. We know Vancouver's a vastly improved, and the Flyers played well against the Canucks last year, right? So Vancouver's not going to sit there and be like, okay, yeah, it's just the Flyers. They're going to be ready for the Flyers this year, and you play them twice in a week. Okay, Calgary's a down team this year, but you're playing them on a back-to-back in the opening weekend of the season. So in Calgary with travel, that's a little bit tough. Edmonton's not easy. Seattle's not easy. It's end of a long road trip, right? You have a home and home with Washington on back-to-back nights. That's not easy to win, because you might win one, but you're probably losing the other. And then you got Minnesota, okay, Montreal, they stink, at Boston and Seattle. And St. Louis. It's not an easy first month for the Flyers. I could certainly see them just legitimately being a sub 500 team as we go into November and not necessarily off to the good start that they got off to last year. And I think that's when the questions might start to creep in just a little bit about what we're talking about, for no other reason that they're not getting the success that maybe that they were getting last year and at the beginning of this season.
No,
I think actually, I will give them, we'll say this. It's always better to start. If you're going to go on the road, go start in Canada. In the season, because the fans are just wild. You yourself as a visiting team can get really pumped up. That'd be down. So, and I'm trying to lift us up right now by saying that we have a great chance on that Western Canada trip because guys will be fired up. The Canadian fans are great for opening week. They're nuts. And those are good cities to have opening games in. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, it's not easy, but at least it'll be fun. And it'll be an opportunity for the guys to ride a little bit of wave of momentum starting the season on the road.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be doing all kinds of previews from now until the start of the season. And then obviously we'll be down there for every home game with the Press Row Show. And we'll be doing some other stuff around the team with the away games and with everything else. And there's going to be far too much Snow the Goalie in your podcast feed and on YouTube. There are a lot of question marks. Andrew brings up, about Drysdale and what's Drysdale is going to be. If he can stay healthy, can he be impactful? All that. We'll be getting into all of that. And like I said before, the torts part of this conversation isn't meant to like drag the entire thing down. The thing that people have to keep in mind is there are a lot of factors at play that go into a team's success beyond what you just see on the ice. And so that is going to be, we won't call it a dark cloud, but the torts dynamic with the team is going to be going on in the background. It'll be our responsibility to report on what we hear and to report on what is told to us directly from those people who are in the locker room, and then to give an informed opinion on this show and on everything else that we do. That's just one part of it. Let's really quick, some positives as the team opens up camp here. Michkov and Lashenko, first rookie game. There have been a lot of positive signs. People who've been down at rookie camp have had a lot of good things to say about Lashenko's speed, about he and Michkov building some early chemistry. Oliver Bonk is a name that's been kind of tossed around. Sounds like Briere is kind of open to maybe the 9-game look at Oliver Bonk to start the season. And I know that you're maybe a little bit more tapped into what's going on with this stuff than Bundy and I are. Any surprises? Do you expect to see Bonk and or Lashenko potentially get a 9-game look to start the season? One, other, neither, both? Your thoughts?
Bonk's got a better chance, I think, than Lashenko does. I'm not convinced that they will, though.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they can't. I mean, let's see how camp progresses here. It's one thing to look good in a rookie game against other junior hockey players for another team. It's another thing to be able to play meaningful games at the NHL level against NHL competition. I'm not sure either are there yet, and that's okay. I mean, like that's fine. I mean, it's exciting that they have guys like that who are maybe a year away, right? I mean, that's a good thing. I don't know. I do think both will be in camp long. I think they'll be here till the end of camp, and there'll be a lot of conversations like, might this guy stick around and get that first 9-game tryout kind of thing. Like, it's possible, but I also don't think that the Flyers are in a situation where they want guys to audition for the first 9 games of an NHL season. You know what I mean? Like, you do that, they want to win. They do want to win. Well, we've been through this. We're not going to have
the players. I'm sure the players.
Yes,
do. Yeah,
and the coach wants to win, right? So in that regard, are you benefiting by playing a kid who you're not sure if they're NHL ready yet, by playing a kid third pair D minutes, or Torts likes to do that 7D lineup sometimes, like get the odd defensive shift or play fourth line minutes, Jet Luchanko. Like, I don't know if that is a benefit for these guys as much as it would be for them to just go back to junior and play where they were playing, and you have them next year. Like, I think they need another year. I think both guys need another year in junior. I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical, right? I just think so. But I think they'll stick around camp for a little bit because they like them enough. Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. Russ, do you want to? Since we've been rolling long here, we're well over an hour here. This is a lengthy episode. You did say we had a super chat, and I do want to give that whoever it was that sent that.
I hate when you read my mind directly, like on the second, because I'm scrolling through the comments from last episode to look for it right now.
Yeah, well, that's also why I was trying to be a buffer
an absolute,
for you.
Some people would call that a studly move on your part. I don't know.
I was trying to just keep talking there for a minute because I see you looking on your second monitor, right?
You're a
You
great
know.
guy. Top notch.
Yeah.
And while I'm looking for the super chat, do you want to give people an update? I know we started the show talking about the wedding, but how you feeling? Do you have your vows written?
I'm fine. I'm ready to go.
You didn't answer the question. Are your vows written?
I'm fine. I'm ready to go.
Ross, this is going to be a quick ceremony.
It's not bad. It's not going to be a long one.
I'll say this, Bundy. So Russ sent the script for the ceremony over yesterday. And I know he was nervous about it because he warned me that he was going to do it, texted me about it like 6 times, sent it over. I said, all right, I'll take a look at it after I eat dinner. Literally 20 minutes later, he's saying, have you read it yet? And I'm like, dude, I said, I'll read it and get back to you. He did a great job. It's a very, very nice ceremony that he put together. Maria was very happy with it. So like, that's all that matters, right? Like more so than me. But I give Russ a lot of credit. He wrote it. He did a very nice, and there's a little bit of humor in it, a little bit of Russ type humor. Like it's not ridiculous. It's not over the top. So it's a nice blend of romanticism and humor and comedy. So good job by Russ Joy.
We'll just have to see if I can execute it or not. You know, we'll see.
Yeah.
I did find the super chat from last episode. It was from Rory, who left a $4.99 super chat. So, Rory, big thank you to you if you're watching live or if you listen back after the fact. But Rory said, would you have traded Bonk for McGroarty if the agent okayed him being willing to sign? Briere has talent, or has to acquire talent if he doesn't want to position organization at the draft. So, would you have traded Bonk for McGroarty if he would sign, as a way to get some talent here other than having to just rely on the draft?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
It's not a bad question. Really not a bad question. But I'm going to say no because defense is the more important position. And you have 2 prospects here. You don't know what either one is ultimately going to be in the NHL. And I think that Bonk's development at London, which is one of the premier junior teams that's out there, right? His development there has been exponentially better than I even think even the Flyers maybe expected. And so therefore, that is a more important position to ensure that you have good young talent at. So you don't want to give up your best defensive prospect, right? So I think you hold on to Bonk in that case. Yeah, but I think it's a good question, Bundy. I don't know about you, but I think Bonk is probably definitely a second pair guy, but he's got top pair upside. And so when you have something like that in your system, you don't give that up in the hope that you have a forward who ends up becoming a good goal scorer, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. The trade-off's not worth it because a defenseman can be many things, especially if you have talent. He could end up being a great shutdown guy. He could be a good two-way, could be a good offensive power play guy. There's too much upside on him to be worrying about trades like that. Yeah. Right now, that's at least I feel I'm exactly with Anthony on that.
Bundy, there was a nice message that came in here from Tony, and I'm sure we can probably get in touch with Tony.
Louie, yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, it says, is it possible to get Bundy to do a video message for my friend being 10 years sober in October? I'll pay whatever it is. He's a huge
Well,
fan.
I have a cameo that I do, and all the proceeds will go to the foundation to help out people struggling with whether finding rent. So I think it's pretty cheap. But if you can go to Cameo and do that, and if you don't have the money to do that, I'll do it for you for free. But just let me know.
A man of the people, that Chris Therien.
Yeah, I'm telling your buddy I am proud of him, though. Yeah, it's really
email the show, right?
Yeah, snowthegoliat@gmail.com.
Yeah, email the show, Tony, and we'll make sure it happens.
That's great.
We got you covered, brother. Congratulate your friend for me personally. Thank you.
And Abozo Must Go says, I've heard there's a Snow the Goalie fan group planning on crashing the wedding.
Yeah. If that happens, there's only 2 people to blame.
Hey,
and you're looking at them on my left and my right because the fans don't know where the wedding is.
Oh, that's true.
So if there is a fan group that crashes the wedding, it has to be because of one of you two.
That's not true. Your
Russ.
fiance could have set it up.
I guarantee you that did not happen.
Let's steal the birdcage.
There isn't a bird.
Wait.
You don't have to. I don't.
Put the
You don't
birdcage there. I'm
understand.
going to walk out with the birdcage.
You don't
cards.
understand the stuff that we have in this house that has to be brought over to the venue for the wedding. There are, I feel like we have become the Amazon shipping center. Like there are so many things that are just in this house, just boxes upon boxes of things. And every day something else arrives. And I ask her, I said, what is this? She's like, oh, it's something for the wedding. Oh, it's something for the wedding. Did I mention the flip-flop station on this show?
No.
Do you know there's a flip-flop station at the wedding?
No. I don't know anything about the wedding other than I'm apparently officiating it.
What is it?
Is Bundy a groomsman? Like, I don't know. Is Bundy the flower girl? I don't know. Are your like? I know nothing. I know where it's at. I know what time I'm supposed to be there. Other than that, I don't know shit. I know what my meal is. I know what my wife's meal is. I don't know if there are hors d'oeuvres. I don't know what kind of beverages are available. I know nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing.
So the first question is, so the flip-flop station, neither of you have heard of this, right? So apparently, because women don't like to dance in heels, that we are now providing flip-flops to the women so that they can go out and dance on the dance floor and not have to wear their heels. And people don't want to be barefoot, so you can come get a free pair of flip-flops. Did not know that this existed.
Dude, that's going to be awesome.
Do they have like SanFilippo and the date on them, or are they just basic?
I don't know. I've not seen them. I found out when I went to the final walkthrough.
With like putting the soles on them, like you have to work it around.
Can I do Blue Angels at the dessert stand?
Well,
Russ is like, what's a Blue Angel? You'll
find
out, Russ. You'll find out what a Blue Angel is.
Here's the other one, Russ. And this is like I ask you because you're younger generation than Bundy and I. Glow sticks?
Love glow sticks.
Big
love
ones
glow sticks
that you wave around and when you're dancing. Like, is this a thing?
I don't know. I used to sell a lot of glow sticks at the JFK pool in my teenage days. I would sell them at splash parties. I was quite the and if we need to raise money, I will happily sell.
So I'm glad you brought up the pool thing because that's what the event planner said when we were over there. She's like, oh yeah, she's like they're like noodles at a pool and people wave them around while they're dancing. I'm like, what are we doing?
That's huge. No, we're not talking about those. But that's big.
I was like, what are we doing? And they were figuring out where that station was going to be. We have a selfie station.
Oh, I love the selfie station, like a photo booth kind of thing. Yeah, I like that.
No booth. It's a selfie station. But there's like I don't know, some kind of background. I have no idea. Like none of this was. I didn't have anything to do with any of this. That wasn't part of the planning.
Plays so well into part of the thing that I wrote into the ceremony. I was right. I was prescient. Like this is good. Very good.
Absolutely.
We will certainly put out something on social media around the SanFilippo wedding. Bundy's kind of in charge of taking a picture of the wedding ceremony itself. We have to get a picture of Ant in his beautiful tux, looking like a stud. Notice that he's got the hair covered up. Let us all not forget that at one point, Anthony shaved his head baby ass smooth because he said, I got my head shaved so that I could grow it out for the wedding, because Anthony forgot that barbers are able to trim the hair. If you grow it out, they're able to trim it. He said, it's just going to grow to the proper length. God.
It's all good.
Andrew Fawcett, by the way, sent over a super chat. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you,
Put this
Andrew.
into the Anthony SanFilippo wedding fund. Anyway, it should be a lot of fun. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode today. I don't know. Is there anything else you guys want to plug? Ant, you're getting married. Are you guys doing Crossed Up again this week before?
I'm not doing it. Ant Jr. is filling in for me on the next two episodes on Crossed Up. Friday will be too hectic, and then next Monday I'll be away. So the offspring will be doing the Phillies clinching the division show with Bob.
How about that? I'll do the Russ Joy show on Friday morning, 8:30, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Bundy, where can the people find you? Are you going to be like doing another hit on Sirius NHL radio this
I
week?
did one the other day. Yeah, whenever they call, if I can do it, I'm always happy to do it.
Shouted us out on in the process.
They did the other day. Yeah, they're. Yeah, you know what? It's good. It's good stuff. Yeah, went on, talked about the season, and had a good conversation with them. Nope, still doing my work, guys. Pennsylvania Recovery Center. You can find me at bundyrecovery.com if you need any help, or anybody does with mental health or addiction. That's really taken over a lot. I think a lot of the mental health with people. So we're always here for you. And thanks for listening to the show today. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
A lot of fun. And big thank you to Sean Couturier for hopping on with us.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
And Russ, you didn't plug my new website, which is pathetic, but that's okay.
Wow, you don't call your new website pathetic. I think you guys are
doing a nice
it's
job.
pathetic.
That
Over
you didn't
on
do
Pattison, on Pattison.com, where you can
Yes.
go read Anthony's takes on the Phillies and the Flyers and everything else. Last thing, this is the perfect way to leave. Rob Greeley says, hopefully Bundy snags a piece of cake for Hitch. We all know that Hitch loves his cake.
I love birthday cake and wedding cake. I like the ones with the little sprinkles on the top that are colored. I think that's birthday cake. I love that. Lots of it.
I hear his favorite is blueberry icing.
Jesus. All right, we're out. Everybody have a
We're
great
out.
rest of
We're
your
out.
day. Everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to all of you next week here on Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. Have a great day, everybody.